Hi, this is Exploring History of Marginalization with me, Zach Signora. Let's get started. So, I actually chose the documentary Living Undocumented. And before we get into it, I just want to preface I did go a little bit out of order. The part one, two, and three format in the topic for the assignment, in my humble opinion, it was a little disorganized for my brain. So I laid it out, this PowerPoint presentation on Living Undocumented, in a more, I believe, a streamlined way. Hopefully, you find it entertaining and informative. So, starting with the summary, the cool thing is this was a actual docu series that I ended up watching over the weekend when I was sicky poo, and I actually found out that it followed 8 undocumented immigrants, and a lot of them came from all over the world, really, and their families are living in America. There's 6 episodes. The topics range a lot, but the main themes were the deportation threats, the legal battles these families and individuals have to face, and the most important was the family separation. Cool tidbit, which I didn't know she was a part of any of this. Selena Gomez produced it, and she's an advocate for this kind of work. She did a great job of really showing the consequence of the current U.S. immigration policies. And the next, we'll keep it moving. All right, so I know what you're thinking. Holy moly, those are a lot of words. But I'm not going to go all through all 10 significant events from the docuseries. I'm actually just going to highlight a few. The number one thing I wanted to highlight, which I still boggles my mind, is the Alejandra one. She was married to a military veteran and she was still getting deported. The other ones were really interesting, but the one that really stood out to me that actually gave me some hope was the Colombian family that got help from advocates. I believe it was from one of the senators, and they were there in that family for, I think they were established in that town for decades, and they were able to get help. So that gives a little bit of hope. The one other thing, it wasn't like an event, but it was kind of just like a piece in the docu series. It was the cameraman showing the families going over emergency separation plans for U.S. born kids when these separations happen. And that just like blew my mind because as a kid, I grew up in a time where I had to learn for emergency evacuations for school bombings or hurricanes. These children, at any point, in any time of the year, in any time of their lives, have to have an emergency separation plan when their parents just get plucked from them. And that's not any way to live. The last one I put on purpose because the guy from El Salvador, Eddie, he literally was just sharing about like how he doesn't want to go back because of the gang violence. These individuals who have to go back, get deported, are going to literal war zones. So it's like, okay, yeah, sorry, you can't hang out in American suburbia or urban areas or even the farms. We're just gonna send you back to a country that's literally torn to pieces, and you're probably gonna get your hands chopped off, your head chopped off, or blown up or shot to death. But bye, like that also is just something that was very moving for me, and I wanted to put that in there as well. So now we're talking about the research. So the research with this one was really interesting. I kind of went the corporate route of how that there was racism in the workplace to prevent from upward mobility, which really made the work environment or those jobs for immigrant workers just be at entry level or low bottom corporate jobs or entry level jobs or undocumented jobs like working in the farms. And there's a reason for that I found in the research was indifference or the lack of awareness. Is more people get informed, more people will help them get access to more resources to help them gain citizenship and help them do it more legitimately. There's also cultural superiority. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. And then the economic scapegoating due to resentments. I wanted to put that in there because the scapegoating is also something I want to cover in the next slide. But the interesting part with here was that economic scapegoating is more for that within a company that it's like, or just in a business that these individuals are staying marginalized because of the systemic racism that they keep facing. And we'll talk a little bit more. So let's go to the next slide. So going from the systemic piece, knocking out the two big ones, the historical events and policies that added to the marginalization of immigrants. The big ones for our country: genocide of the Native Americans and enslavement of African Americans. That really plowed the mindset of the early founding fathers of having this mindset of marginalizing immigrants and anyone who was different. Then came the annexation of the Mexican Americans. I believe that was like right around or pre-Civil War. It was pretty much like America, like we did in the colonial times. Oh, you're there? We're gonna kick your ass out. Bye. See you later. Have a great life. And then we pretty much got Texas and other now southwestern states, but those were Mexican colonies. And then fast forward to the 1900s, the Mendez versus the Westminster, uh, that lawsuit was actually a springbox for the bigger one, which was Brown versus the Board of Education, which was crucial in the civil rights movement. So that Mendez versus Westminster was actually a good thing, but at the same time, there were still heavy racial tension. So that actually led to probably a lot of resentments because this all happened in California, and there's probably a lot of racial resentments at the time that kind of just over time just grew and cultivated. The Chicano movement, that was also in the early 50s, I believe, is when it really took off. And it was essentially the civil rights movement for Mexican Americans. These things did push the needle, but it really didn't help them currently. And like, it gave them rights to certain things, but again, they still remain marginalized after a long period of time. And then the last thing is just like what's going on in the news today: the ICE raids, the separation of family members. This is from the historical events to current events and the different policies that kind of popped up through time that still add to the marginalization of immigrants. Just a reflection piece. Personal bias, check it at the door. No one wants it there. Just like your ego, check it at the door before you go into work. In this line of work, you got to check that stuff at the door. When you don't do it, play the tape through. It does more harm than good. We're all grown adults in this field. We know all the harms that it can do, and we have no room for it here. Welcoming immigrants is something I'm a big advocate for. My great grandfather was an immigrant from Italy, and I do have ties to Italy myself. Like I actually am all for helping immigrants, no matter where they came from, as long as they're trying to be a good standout person and not burn down the village. Keep them here. Help where you can. Help where you can is where, and if they need help, they just get over the border or they just got off the boat or onto the beach. You know, it's just people helping people. Last thing we want to do is send them back where they came from and have their hands chopped off. So another reflection point: when these issues are not addressed, and social workers don't push for the advocacy for pushing for immigrants' rights and getting the help they need, the ripping of communities will continue to devastate not just local communities, but larger communities on an economic scale. And immigrants make up majority of the workforce for those less desirable jobs, and we need them individuals to help boost the economy and keep it safe. The next thing is like, who else? Like, if you don't keep this in check from ripping communities apart, what other communities that are marginalized are going to get ripped apart next? Then let's talk about due process. It's pretty much gone at this point with the current ICE raids that are going on. There's constant system failures. The government literally just got back in office, and the trust of the people, if it continues to go this route, it's going to get broken even more and more fragmented, and it's going to be very dangerous. The detention centers, I brought that up because like these are just like things that people kind of forget. Like, where do people go? They get deported or they get picked up, and then where do they go? Well, they get put in these detention centers, which are just dehumanizing and super overcrowded. It's extremely inhumane, and the more we don't address this, the worse it's going to get. Okay, so I know that I'm a little over time, but this is the last slide about the reflection piece, and I just want to mention one size does not fit all. And what that means is that these policy reforms are ignoring the fact that well established undocumented immigrants are getting treated the same as a brand new border crosser, and that simply is and completely unfair. Kind of like the Colombian family, and also the female who married the military veteran. And the one biggest mistake, which is crazy to me after being a country for this long, is the less legal pathways we have to help immigrants, the more deportations are going to happen and more human beings trying to escape literal war zones will go back to war zones and get killed or maimed or whatever your creative mind can think of. So, more legal pathways need to happen on top of policy reform. And then moving on. Concerns? Also, if you like my video, leave a comment in the chat box below. Thanks and have a great night.